Good afternoon. I think we're going to go ahead and get started now, but I'm really excited to see all this energy here and people talking to each other. Alrighty. I am Sarah Nusser. I am co-chair of the Institutional Effectiveness Leadership Team, along with my co-chair, Beata Schmidtman. We are really glad that you've joined us. We have people joining us online as well, so thank you to those of you who logged in. Our goals today are really to share information about the Improved Service Delivery Project and to get your feedback. And we've done quite a few of these at this point, and we've learned a few things as we've gone along. And I guess the first thing I want to be expressing is that we do not have all the answers, so we definitely want to see your questions. We will try and answer them the best way we can. We'll be presenting a 30,000-foot view of how we might rethink HR and some financial services today. And approval of this model or some modification of this model would be just a beginning. We will have a lot of work to do after this model. We need to figure out what the units are and to find the right number of supporting units around our mission units. And various nature of the teams and so on, which we'll talk about. And we will need to work with the employees and their supervisors in this process to see how their current roles are impacted. In many cases, we are thinking about how employees might transition to new positions and reporting lines, or it's resetting responsibilities. So if you are somebody who's performing HR and financial services today, it's very natural to be anxious and to wonder how your job might change in the future. And it also might be frustrating that we don't know all the answers to your questions today. People have really asked a lot of very good things. But we want to emphasize that our team and the president really believes that taking a one-size-fits-all approach would be a disservice to you and the university. And that means that we will need to have conversations with you and your supervisor to determine how best to match your strengths to the new structure. Somebody has asked yesterday, how many conversations will you have to have with employees to implement this plan? And the answer really is as many conversations as it's going to take to do this the right way. So we're going to talk about what we do know about the proposals for these models right now. And we want to work collaboratively with you, and one of the ways we're doing that is through this open forum. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about what we'll cover today, and then Beata and I are going to tag team to go through the presentation. The first thing is that we're going to talk a little bit about context. This is really a complicated change, and it's good to know how this relates to other transitions on campus. Then we will go through each of the two proposed models and talk a little bit about the roles and the structure of those models, and then we'll give a high-level view of what we think a transition might look like. We want to make sure that you understand that we definitely want your feedback. What do you like about this model? What concerns do you have? What questions do you have? We've received a tremendous amount of feedback already and have been monitoring that, so we're getting a pretty good feel. But we want to make sure that everybody provides information that wishes to. There's a FAQ place on the web that will show us at the last slide and talk a little bit about how to get more information. Okay, so as you all know, campus is undergoing a lot of change, and there are three other projects that connect with this project. The first is the WorkSite or the Workday project, and this is really a new software system that's designed to update our outdated, unreliable, and vulnerable legacy systems from past years. Workday will basically require us to do things differently. The way modern software works relative to software of decades ago is quite different, but it's also an opportunity for us to look at our business processes and see how we can simplify them and improve them. So that's the Improving Business Processes project on the right. These processes involve working with people who have expertise in specific areas. That's what we're going to talk about today in terms of improved service delivery. Ultimately, we'll need to define some new roles and positions, and that will obviously need to connect to the P&S classification and compensation review. So those things are part of the bigger picture, but today we want to drill down and talk about how might we organize staff to support services using the Workday software and leveraging our updated business processes. As we get started here, I want to share a little bit about what motivates improved service delivery from the institutional perspective. And the first thing we always want people to know is that Iowa State really has an exceptional body of employees, staff, faculty, leaders throughout campus. And it is really important that all of us work together in order to get our work done. I know that I rely very deeply on all levels within my organization for us to be of good service to campus. And so we want you to understand that we really value the contribution of all types of employees at Iowa State. The Workday transition, as I indicated earlier, is an opportunity to redesign how we deliver services in HR and some financial services that will serve all of us. And it's really a principle of what we're doing to build on the tremendous strengths that exist with our employees today. So what drives us in our discussions? First, we want to improve the employee experience. We want to better support the missions at Iowa State and the units that also support those missions. And we want to grow and enhance our culture of service. We're committed to this being a collaborative, supportive process. We realize this affects a lot of people on campus. And again, this open session is one of those ways in which we want to work with you. So what are these approaches that I'm talking about? The new models really recognize that services are more effectively delivered by employees who have a deep understanding of the subject matter around those services. And so that brought us to the concept of functional specialists, people who really know, are really HR professionals, or they are knowledgeable about regulations and policies or accounting systems. We are proposing these new organizational structures to support these specialists, and some of the goals that we have in doing this is helping these groups of individuals work in teams together to support each other and share knowledge. That these functional specialists would be supervised by knowledgeable supervisors who are also experts in these areas and understand their new roles and the transitions we're going through to help guide the development of these units. We also seek to have more professional development opportunities through this process to both to deepen your skills and to be able to move up through a career ladder in these areas. And we want to support the ability to balance workloads across people in the service units as we get through peak periods, and to provide backup so people can take leave as they need. We also, again, have a goal to collaborate with affected staff. This is really a very important goal of this project, and the units that have these staff in them to talk through the responsibilities of those who might not join the service units. So who has been guiding this project? President Winterstein established the Institutional Effectiveness Leadership Team to make a recommendation on the finance and HR models. Because of the close connection to worksite and the need to get broader campus stakeholders, we took this team and we expanded it with the president of the P&S Council, Stacy Renfro, the president of Faculty Senate, Peter Martin, and the chair of the Chairs Council, Chad Gaston. And so we dubbed this the super group to bring the worksite perspective, the improved service delivery perspective, and the campus stakeholders perspective together. This is the group that's responsible for crafting the recommendation after considering this feedback. So what have we been doing and where are we now in this process? With the reboot of the Improved Service Delivery Project, we took some time to understand where we left off, what the concerns were with the prior approach, and how Workday and business process improvement would intersect with these staffing structures. Early on in these discussions, it became clear that the concept of functional specialists wasn't going to be an important one, and that framed a lot of our thinking. Over the last several weeks, we have discussed various proposed models that are around organizing staff who serve as specialists in HR and finance, and we are now at a phase of sharing these draft models and gathering input from campus. We will take the feedback that we receive, and we will work with the supergroup to formulate a final recommendation to President Winterstein. It is our goal to get this to President Winterstein as early as we can in November so that she can make a decision, and the work that needs to be done both with Workday development and a staffing transition plan can really begin in earnest. So I want to just summarize what's changing and what's not changing. So again, what is proposed to change is that we have an enhanced service structure with new reporting relationships, and Beata is going to talk about that in just a few minutes. That's reflected in these models for service delivery. We want to strengthen the culture of service, accountability, and consistency across campus and how we do things. We will have specialized staff in HR and finance under these models, and we will need to modify position responsibilities inside units for staff who have been doing some HR or finance today who do not join those service groups. So if we were to adopt this model, what is not going to change? Units will still be served by staff who understand the unit's needs and context. Units will still work with UHR and the finance division to augment training, communications, and programs with that unit-specific context to customize professional development and customer support. Units will still need administrative support. Those of us who lead units, we cannot get along without our administrative support. They help us run the ship. We will definitely want to continue getting feedback, in fact, provide better avenues to get feedback into the system as we go through transitions so we can adjust the system in relation to what's working and what's not working. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Beata Schmidtman, who's going to talk a little bit about reporting relationships.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And again, thank you all for coming. So I want to start out before we start showing you these new structures, which take the form of org charts. I want to start out by talking about two important characteristics that are going to be critical for both of these structures to work successfully. One of them has to do with reporting relationships. Whenever we start a new organizational structure, we're talking about reporting relationships. So one of them has to do with reporting relationships, and then connected to that, a culture of customer service and consistent training. So with this first slide, I'm going to start talking about the reporting relationships. So all of us are familiar with the standard solid line reporting relationship. If you look at a traditional organizational chart, you'll see a lot of solid lines, and that's the classic supervisor direct report relationship. All of us have a supervisor. Some of us have direct reports. And what supervisors typically do is, obviously they lead this relationship. They act as the hiring managers, so they hire the people on their teams. They make the final decision on those hires. And they also coordinate workload and backup. If you're leading a team, you're making sure that your team members are all contributing, and they're all contributing at roughly the same level, and that you don't have one person who's being completely overloaded. And then in these structures, which are going to be, our improved service delivery structures, it's also very important that the supervisor makes sure that this ethos of customer service and accountability is upheld. I mean, we already have a very strong service culture here on campus with staff who are truly dedicated to their units and the students and faculty that they serve. And that's an understanding, that's a culture that we want to continue to support and even strengthen. But there is a feature that is not so traditional on your normal org chart, and that's the dotted line relationship. And what I'll show you in a minute is a chart where, HR specialists report to other HR specialists, report to other HR specialists, whereas right now you might be reporting to a department chair or a dean. So how does that relationship to a department chair or a dean continue to be strong if that's no longer a solid line reporting relationship? And that's where the dotted line comes in. So that reporting relationship we call a dotted line, and the dotted line supervisor helps with setting the performance management criteria. That's somebody who is consulted to and contributes to the annual performance evaluation of the staff member. That's somebody who's involved in the hiring process, even though that may not be the person who makes the final hiring decision for this team member. But the dotted line supervisor is definitely involved because this team member may be somebody working with their unit. So, I would have a vested interest in knowing whether this person has the ability to understand, a large academic college. And certainly the dotted line supervisor can provide input into the development of policies and procedures. And since a lot of the day-to-day working relationship is within the unit that this team serves, this dotted line supervisor is also very much involved in the day-to-day activities of the staff members. So that's the discussion of these two reporting relationships, which you're going to see in the org charts that we're going to present to you in a little bit. Now, the other piece that is very important and which will be part of this discussion is really service and accountability, strengthening our culture of service and strengthening our culture of accountability. And for staff members to be able to, perform their jobs at the highest possible levels, that requires training. That requires consistent training. It requires customized training. And what we mean by that, customized means, so you can really perform your job functions, but you also know the things you need to know about the unit you serve. And by consistent, what we mean is two things. You don't just get trained once, and that's it for the rest of your career at Iowa State University, but policies change, procedures change. So this training is constantly being updated so that, staff are always at the leading edge of their professional responsibilities. But consistent also means that staff across campus receive similar levels of training. Right now, the training you receive may depend very much on where you are on campus. But with these new structures, if you're an HR professional, it doesn't matter whether you serve the College of Design or whether you serve student affairs, you'll get a comparable and consistent level of training. The other piece there is, of course, understanding finance policies, workday business reporting, and a piece that is probably new to us on campus is really very intentional training on customer service. Okay, that in itself is a skill, and there are things to learn there, and we anticipate delivering specific training there in addition to making sure that everybody's ready to, work well within the new Workday environment. The other thing that Workday addresses is the transparency of performance management criteria. Again, we hear this from staff a lot, that performance evaluations, expectations can differ vastly from one unit in the university to another, and that, the level of performance evaluations that people receive are very inconsistent. With Workday, that'll help us be a little bit more transparent, because Workday is a system that makes it very clear what processes are moving through the system, where they are at any particular stage, how long they're taking to be completed, so we can see whether a staff member is overburdened, may need some help, whether a staff member is very, very effective, gets a lot of work done, whether maybe there is a complexity in the system and we need to make additional person power available. So that's all going to be very transparent, and it'll be very easy for a supervisor to, make the right resources and the right guidance available for the team to be able to effective. Collaboration and support. Staff members in these structure, the HR specialists, the finance specialists, will work in teams. Now, these are not necessarily teams located in the same room, because we want to make sure that the people who serve a particular unit are physically close to that particular unit. But there's certainly teams that get together on a regular basis, teams that are supervised by someone who is himself or herself an expert either in finance or HR, so that this person can address questions that team members have, particular challenges, particular professional development opportunities, et cetera. And the teams will also be able, since they meet on a regular basis, they'll also be able to, you'd have a group of peers. There is some peer-to-peer professional development that occurs too. The person you can ask a quick question because they do a job that is not too different from yours, and they can probably help, especially if you're new or whatever. And because we have teams, it'll be very easy to balance workloads when somebody is sick or when somebody is on vacation. Right now, we have a lot of situations where, if somebody is out, there is no support available for that particular unit, or somebody picks it up who's really not trained in those responsibilities, but just kind of, keeps things going until the person is back. That'll give us a much more seamless way of addressing the invariable absences that always occur in a large organization like Iowa State University. So with that, solid and dotted line reporting relationships, and what does it mean when we talk about customer service and training and collaboration? Let me turn to the first of our proposed models, the one for human resources, and then in a minute, Sarah will take you through the second one, okay? So again, this is a proposed model. I'll show it to you as an org chart. It's a 30,000 view level, so not every little detail is represented in this chart, okay? But feel free to ask questions at the end if you do want to understand some things a little better. So the first thing I want to explain are the three colors in the chart, okay? There are blue pieces in the chart, then there are ones that are yellow or golden, and then there are ones that are red or cardinal, okay? The blue boxes represent individuals or responsibilities that are located in Central University Human Resources, think be a chair, okay? And so there is a vice president, obviously, and lead HR partner. Then the red teams down here are teams of HR coordinators. These are human resources specialists. They know exactly how to use Workday, and they know how to get a business transaction started in Workday, and they know how to monitor it and make sure that it flows through the system in a seamless fashion. And so these are individuals, they're typically going to be several. The supervisor of these teams is the so-called HR partner, and the HR partner is both a Workday expert, which is why they have a little bit of red in their box there, but they're also someone who provides strategic support for units. And the units here are depicted in yellow. These are sort of the mission areas of the universities. These are colleges or the responsibilities of associate vice presidents, et cetera. And you can see that a large unit might have its own human resources team working with them. Two smaller units might share one team. And then fundamentally, the units report up to the senior vice president. And the senior vice president has a dotted line to the senior HR partner, and that's the person who supervises the HR partners. So we currently have HR liaisons. The HR liaisons are probably the closest in scope, in position responsibilities to the HR partner. Now today, the HR liaisons report to a dean or to an associate vice president or senior vice president. And what you can see is this is now a dotted line relationship. This is no longer a solid line relationship. So there continues to be very close interaction, very close collaboration between, say, a dean and their HR partner. But the solid line reporting relationship is to the senior HR partner. That's, a very well-trained HR professional who can guide and oversee a team of HR partners, provide them with the right professional development, provide them with the right guidance so they can be good leaders of their own teams. And that's also the person, the senior HR partner, who is ultimately responsible for making sure that that customer service relationship between the HR service structure and the mission units, the academic division, the student affairs division, that relationship is strong and works well. So this is the philosophy behind this model. I'll skip through the next slide because I think I've said a lot of that, but here is just sort of a quick example for where you would go with an issue. Okay, if you're a department chair, you have a salary equity issue, maybe with staff, maybe with faculty, you go to your HR partner, somebody who is slightly more strategic. If you are a hiring manager and you want to initiate the hiring of a new staff member or maybe even faculty member, you go to your HR coordinator who knows how to initiate such a process in Workday. Okay? Right now, you go to somebody who puts this into people admin to get the sort of formal process started. Now you go to your HR coordinator and you get it started in Workday. Now you may have other questions. I'm moving. How do I update my address? That's not really an HR issue. That's an issue of self-service in Workday, and departments, colleges, et cetera, will still have administrative support staff who can address those questions. Okay, so much about human resources. And I'll skip now and turn it over to Sarah to walk us through the finance structure.
Thank you, Beata. So at this point, I really like to have everybody reset their mind because we're going to look at a different model. There's some similarities in the features, but the focus is more on specific kinds of financial transactions that require accounting knowledge or that require the ability or interest in understanding regulations and policies associated with the financial actions. In other words, what we want to represent is that we need good technical knowledge so that we are ensuring these actions are right the first time. So this chart has the same color key as before, with blue being central, yellow being the mission units and the strategy, decision making, and then the red boxes represent functional specialists. So what services would be organized in the new structure? I want to begin with roles before I go to structure. What services are going to be considered in the new structure? Well, there's a set of individuals who would be have accounting knowledge that would be finance specialists. So they would be doing things like salary allocations, debits and credits, cash and accrual type accounting to help us manage our finances. There's another set of units that really focus on procurement and expense and grants fiscal management that really require more of this regulatory and policy knowledge. So they might be processing travel reimbursements, equipment purchases, grant expenses, helping someone figure out what sort of funding I might have in my portfolio of grants and so on. These individuals would not only take actions, but they'd be working on reports as needed to inform the decision-making of the units served, and they would be able to address finance-related questions. There is still the opportunity for employees to enter their own travel expenses, use P cards, and so on. So this does not remove the capacity of a unit to do regular sorts of financial transactions. The other thing I'd like to say about these boxes is that this really represents people who might have more than one expertise, and it represents different levels of expertise. The second role that I want to talk a little bit about is the fiscal officer, which is in the yellow part of the diagram. So a unit often has someone who helps them manage their budget, do budget planning, figure out how to allocate resources, really looking at after the unit's financial health. The fiscal officer is really considered a strategist, someone who really enables the mission to be accomplished through the budgetary activities. And so they would be working with the finance teams to get information It's not really represented as any particular kind of line, but there would be a lot of interactions between the fiscal officers and their supporting teams and the teams that would support these specific financial services. I'd like to talk a little bit about the structure at this point. So we have these red boxes. Let's begin with these again. These are teams of individuals that are organized to serve one or more units, depending upon the size and complexity of the units. The size and composition of these teams would vary with the type of unit. So if you're in student affairs, there's not a lot of grant activity in student affairs. We wouldn't expect to see many, if any, grants fiscal management specialists in teams serving that particular division. If you're in a college or a department that's highly research active, then you would expect there to be more grants fiscal management specialists in the team. As I mentioned, there would be multiple layers of expertise, and they would really be available to interact with clients in order to provide information, accurate information, into the fiscal planning of a unit. Now, these teams will be supervised by a finance manager. That's more or less in that same slot as the HR partner. So this individual is really responsible for ensuring the professional development of these teams, watching after workload balancing, helping to fill gaps when someone needs to or wants to have an leave. And they are really responsible to providing service to the units themselves. So there's a dotted line into the director of that unit, the leader of that unit. We do really expect that in many instances, for example, I have a fiscal officer, I would ask my fiscal officer to manage this relationship for me. But it's really, I would really be the person responsible for saying, hey, we need to solve a problem if I need to work with the finance manager. The finance manager would be knowledgeable about the types of services being offered and the units being served. So they're also responsible for getting context about the unit and making sure the teams understand that context. And as Beata mentioned, we really want these teams to be close to the units they're being served. So the finance manager reports into what is proposed to be an associate VP in the finance division that would look after this and other customer service units that the finance division supports. And in contrast to the idea of the HR model, there's only one of these VPs. So the AVPs. The AVP would work with each of the three senior VPs in the division to ensure that if there are any wrinkles in the system, if needs are not being met, they can resolve that at that higher level. Okay. So once again, let me just go back to the yellow boxes with the fiscal officers. They are the strategists, and they are responsible for the unit budget planning and analysis. They leverage these financial specialists to get information needed, to ask questions that, where they get analysis, but the decisions are remaining in the unit. So the actions might be taken by people in the finance teams, but the decisions and the requests are coming out of the units themselves. So that is the overview of the finance model, and I'm going to turn it over to Beata to talk a little bit about the transition. There we go.
Okay, so this is going to be a very high-level discussion of what might be a possible transition strategy. How do we go from where we are today to where do we need to end up, assuming we adopt these proposed models or something very similar? Okay, so that's what I want to discuss at this point. And there are two pieces that we need to look at. We need to look at how we're going to fill the roles of these functional specialists in human resources and HR. And then the other question is, how do we create attractive, interesting positions For those individuals who might not be interested in moving into a specialist role, but who are currently performing a little bit of HR and a little bit of finance, that might transition to one of these financial specialists. So these are the two separate questions that we need to consider. So, but before I go into those details, let me talk a little bit about the guiding principles. And we alluded to all of this already, okay? So the first one really is, we know we have staff with lots of expertise. You know, people who have served in these roles, people who have deep knowledge of human resources, deep knowledge of finance, people who have deep knowledge of the units they may have worked with for years. This is knowledge on which we want to build. This is an important resource for the university. This is something that is extremely valuable to us. We want to build on this knowledge, okay? So there is not going to be that complete reset that, some people might be concerned about. The other thing is we want to keep that knowledge and experience aligned with units. So if someone has been working for a particular unit, a college, a large department or so, for a number of years and really knows those individuals, those faculty, those students, those other staff members intimately, it's only natural to make sure that that person continues to serve this unit. And all of this is a long way of saying that we want to keep the disruption for staff members as well as for units as minimal as possible, okay? I mean, it's not possible to keep it absolutely to zero, but we want to keep it as minimal as possible to keep people as close as possible to their current roles. The other thing which is very important is, we want to make sure that we follow a very collaborative and supportive process. I mean, it is a lot of change. We're talking about people's responsibilities, their jobs, and we want to be very supportive and very collaborative as we go through this process and help people find the best match with their interests and expertise. And the other thing I want to say is, I mean, we're aware of the fact that Iowa State University is already a very lean institution. And this is not a process. Improved service delivery is not a process or an effort that is designed to reduce our workforce. So let me turn to how do we identify people who go into these who might be interested in serving in these functional specialist roles, okay? So first of all, we need to give people the information that they need in order to be able to make an informed decision. And the first thing means that, once we have a little bit more information, once we're done with the campus engagement phase, that we develop draft position descriptions or job profiles, as they're going to be called in Workday. We're going to develop these draft position descriptions and make them available so staff can review them and see whether they're a good match for their interests and their expertise. Then we'll provide opportunities. These could be sort of, meetings with potentially interested staff. We'll provide opportunities for staff to learn more about these position descriptions, to be able to have their questions answered. And these are meetings that could be led by University Human Resources or by the Finance Division, and talk a little bit more about what these new specialist roles entail and what type of roles they're going to be. So people have the information that allows them to make an informed decision and to say, for example, yes, I'm interested in one of those roles. I would be interested in becoming a grants management specialist. I think I have the skills, the expertise, the qualifications to be a finance manager. So then we'll have conversations with unit leaders and with staff to come up with a good matching. Unit leaders may want to have an interest in knowing who is going to serve their unit. They may know some people who they think are really qualified to do so. Maybe this is a person who didn't raise their hand and expressed interest. Then maybe we have some opportunities to build our talent pool for these new roles. But it's really going to be a matchmaking process. Here's the interest, the expertise. Here are the needs of the units. How do we match this up with, as little disruption as possible for everyone concerned? And, once we've completed this part of the process, maybe some of these roles are still unfilled. We'll recruit for those. We'll fill them. This is the part which is really a recruitment process, job application process. The other one is more an informal process of conversations. Then everyone will be trained in the use of Workday and in, whatever it is they need to know for their new roles. People will receive training. And this is an ambitious timeline, since these are roles that are critical for getting Workday started on July 1, 2019. This whole process needs to be completed by July of 2019. And so we know this is ambitious. We know that a lot of work needs to be done between, today and July 1. We'll look at that, and we're thinking very carefully about all the steps that might be required to bring this to a successful conclusion, and get that started as soon as we have a decision from the president. Now, what about someone who is not interested in becoming a functional specialist? Okay, so what is that process like for this individual who says, this is really not something I'm interested in? Maybe 80% of my current role is providing administrative support to a department chair, to faculty. I do a little bit of HR. I'm really not interested in becoming a specialist. Okay, so again, we will meet with these individuals, understand their current work, their skill sets, what are they interested in, what are they passionate about, what do they like doing. We'll also talk to their unit leader, maybe a department chair, maybe an associate vice president, and say, what is some of the work that really needs to get done in your unit, but nobody ever had time for? We're a very lean institution, so we all have things on our to-do list that we just wish somebody would be able to do, but the person power simply isn't there. So maybe that unit needs to spend more time writing friendly letters, thank you letters to donors. Maybe this unit wants to have more time for somebody to network with alumni, or whatever it is. There may be some things that the unit really would like to accomplish, but hasn't had the resources and the personnel, the staff to do. There may be some opportunities here for those individuals to pick up these additional responsibilities, to turn their role into something that's a little bit different, but continues to be meaningful and very, very valuable to their unit. Again, this is a matchmaking to match skills, interest with the needs of the units. And again, we want to do that with as little disruption to everyone concerned as possible. So, once the match has been agreed on, we need to update the position descriptions. This process doesn't have to be completed in July. Obviously, people want some certainty. People want to know, what's my job going to be going forward? So we want to proceed as quickly as reasonably possible. This is likely to begin in spring of 2019 as some people move into specialist roles. That'll trigger conversations for some other individuals. It can begin in spring of 2019. It does not have to be completed by July 1. It can continue into fiscal 20, but again, in the interest of giving people certainty about their future roles, we do hope to have this completed as soon as possible. Now, we've been monitoring the questions and the comments that have come back, and we realized this has created a lot of questions for staff, about, what's my future work going to be, is my job going to go away? I do want to just say that I think, a lot more information will become available as we go forward. I would encourage individuals to just, wait until this information is available before, you make big decisions. Once we have a decision from the president, we expect that this, the new information will unfold relatively quickly. So you should be able to get to the answers to the questions that you're now seeking. But in case, there is a lot of concern and a lot of worry, let me just point out that our usual support resources for employees are available, whether it's employee assistance, whether it's our wellness programs. If you're looking for a conversation with someone who's knowledgeable in human resources, you can find your HR liaison. If you don't know who that is, the presentation that is online, that link will take you to a list of HR liaisons if you want to talk to someone in ombuds, university HR, employee and labor relations staff. They can help you with, some of the concerns that you may have right now, to the extent that we can address those, as we're still in a period of transition. There is the ICU Wellbeing site. That's always a good place to visit. We all go into places where, maybe sometimes we're a little bit more stressed out than we want to be. So there are a number of strategies here that can help people, maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable in a time that is indeed, characterized by a lot of uncertainty. Let me leave you just with concluding thoughts. And all of this I've said before, but we just want to emphasize it again before we wrap up the presentation and go to questions. Again, we do want to reemphasize that, university leadership, we are all very, very much aware that we have exceptional people here at the university. I've lived in other parts of the country. I have not found the dedication to their work, their people, their students that I've found here in Iowa and at Iowa State University. I mean, I can say that honestly. It is really exceptional here. It's truly exceptional here. And, the goals of this project are to improve the employee experience, both for the staff, working in teams, having a knowledgeable supervisor, more consistent training, more consistent performance evaluations, and also for the people who are being served. We do believe that this will better support Iowa State's mission and the mission of our units, and that it'll continue to enhance our culture of service. Again, let me reemphasize, we do want this to be a very supportive process, a collaborative process. You're not just going to come in one morning and somebody is going to tell you this is going to be your job. There'll be conversations, there'll be an opportunity to really learn what the opportunities are and what you bring to your units. And I want to also emphasize one more time that, we shared proposed models, and we're really looking for your feedback and your questions. And just as a reminder, again, this is the website for Worksite, where there is also information about improved service delivery. And there is the website where you can submit questions or concerns or comments. You don't have to leave your name or email if you choose not to. So again, thank you for coming today. Thank you for taking an interest. And we're happy to take your questions. Thank you. And if you would use the microphone so people who are listening online can also hear your questions, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
The flow chart for the financial, and this really will apply to both once my question maybe is, yeah. So my question is, first of all, who's the unit? Is the unit the department?
So the unit is not well defined in these charts on purpose. So they look like they are colleges. They could be departments. In student affairs, departments are something entirely different. And so our struggle in representing this concept is we really can't take it to a literal org chart. Do you have a question around the unit that you're sitting at?
Right. Well, yeah, because, if it's a unit, this all means one thing, obviously, and if the unit is the college, it means a whole different thing. So I think there's a lot more questions that can come from either way, whatever that answer is, as far as the flow of who's going to be the fiscal officer, who's going to be procurement, et cetera.
Got it. Okay, so what I can see is that our team is not working on the organizational structure in the mission units. That is really the role of the mission units to determine that. Our team has been focusing on these functional specialists. How can we help them be successful in their roles as we move to that kind of a model? I think I guess it's beneficial to ask these questions inside your unit. And it's something that we've been starting to talk about a lot. How do we have those conversations happen inside the unit so people can ask the kinds of questions you might have on your mind? So I know that's not satisfying, but the models are really about outside of the unit serving the mission of these units, and how a particular college or division of student affairs approaches that is really in the purview of those divisions.
Maybe I can add one thing.
Yes, please
So,
do.
Then the question comes, how are you going to decide what a unit is? Okay, so that's maybe a little bit easier to answer without coming to a specific, this is going to be this unit. We're going to look at size, so head count. That's always a baseline for human resources. It's not enough because there may be special complexities in the unit that we need to keep track of. We're going to look at the number of financial transactions, the number of accounts on the finance side. The main message is we want to make units large enough that they warrant having a team. Right now we have departments where, we don't even have enough HR work for one dedicated person. Okay, so that is clearly not going to be a unit because it's too small. Okay, now, so it's got to have a certain size to warrant being served by a team of specialists. So I'll leave it at that.
So how will job descriptions or classifications look going forward? Like right now, I'm a merit employee. Do you anticipate that that will change?
I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
How will job classifications change?
In the specialists?
Well, right now, as you know, for a grant specialist across the university, they have a bunch of different job titles.
Yeah.
Are you envisioning just one job title for a grant specialist, and then you'll move everyone into that job title?
Okay, I think that those details have not been determined. I think that part of the class and comp review is to have job profiles that represent what people are doing and to have appropriate titles to that. I know for grant coordinators, they have all kinds of different titles, and it's not really an articulated series. For inside these, there are kind of two skill sets that are needed. You might get both of those skill sets in the same person. So again, it's being able to having expertise in accounting, the field of accounting, and having interest and expertise or to sort of parse regulations and policies that might define what's allowable under particular contracts. And so, so whether that's described in a single job profile or multiple job profiles, I am not sure, but I know the conversation has been around making sure that people who have multiple skill sets can be recruited into the specialist role. Does that help or? Okay, thank you.
My question is financial. So in our department, we have HR people, we have finance people doing our thing. We're paying those salaries. In this model, those folks will have a dotted line to those folks, but they'll be reporting centrally. How is that funding going to work? Who's paying the salaries?
Okay,
We're already setting fiscal year 20 budgets
yeah.
and don't know what this looks
Are
like.
you in an academic department?
No,
Okay.
FP&M.
Okay. So it'll depend a little bit on where you are. If you are on the academic side of the house, we have an RMM, we have a budget model, and the budget model follows certain principles, tuition dollars flow to colleges, but the college is then charged allocated expenses. So, in our preliminary discussions with Senior Vice President Pam Kane around this, she said, well, we anticipate that this philosophy will continue. Okay, so, for example, for me as a dean, I imagine I'm going to continue to get my allocation of tuition dollars. If someone out of my unit migrates into one of the specialist teams, the salary will stay with me, but I will then be charged more allocated expenses. So for FP&M or for units that are currently being financed out of allocated expenses, the same might happen because you're also being charged allocated expenses. So, you would keep that portion in your budget, but your costs that you're being charged in terms of allocated expenses would go up. Now, that would be following the philosophy of the budget model. A lot of that still depends, needs to be worked out. But that would keep us within the way we run our budget right now, at least at very broad strokes.
So I'm Robin McNeely from the College of Design. So who is going to decide which of the staff will fit into which position within, say, the college? Who's going to look at that and say, that so-and-so position will be affected, and then who might get that position if they wish it?
So that should be a conversation between Dean Luis Rico Gutierrez, representatives from Human Resources. Maybe by this time, the HR partner who serves the College of Design is already identified, and the impacted staff. So, it's kind of a three-way conversation, what is this person currently doing? Is this person already doing predominantly human resources or predominantly finance? Maybe there's a natural fit then, in the service structure. Or maybe there is another way in which we can meet the needs of the College of Design and create an interesting job for the affected individual.
Okay, so then you expect that the college, the dean would do that if it was an academic unit? Or
The
academic
dean would
staff?
certainly be involved, I have however many hundreds of people, so I might not be in every one of these conversations, but I certainly have an interest that this works well for, the impacted staff members and for my units.
Okay, and so as a follow-up then, how will the staff and when will the staff who will be affected, when will they know that their job is one that will be affected?
Well, you wanna
Yeah,
take-
so we're trying to work that out, but so if some version of this model is approved by President Winterstein, I think the first thing is to make the sketch of the job profiles available to campus and have some discussions about, all we know right now is who has access to systems. So we don't really have an easy way at Iowa State to say, person A, B, and C, they definitely have HR experience and so on. So, so we're actually working on this question, how do we reach the people who might be affected? And then we also need to learn, we just need to understand what people's interests and capabilities are. So we've been talking about how do we get some initial information on that to help frame the questions and figure out how we're going to do things. Our current systems really are not helpful in this environment because they are not, our position descriptions are set up in a particular way. We have information systems that basically tell us who has access to a system, which isn't very good for a job description. So we are working on that. And I realize that some people, we had an example yesterday of someone whose entire job was composed of HR, grants management, financial management. That's a tough situation, and we really want to find these people as quickly as we can, because that's a tough situation.
I have one
And
more
it's
question.
it's probably easy to say who's not affected. If you're an academic advisor, you're not affected. If you're a P&S scientist, you're not affected. So if you don't touch HR, human resource, you're certainly not affected.
That makes sense. So my last question is, so let's say someone's notified that their job will be affected because they have those two components in there. And do you expect that they will have the first opportunity to have that job because it is basically their job? Will they have that, or will it be opened up to a pool and other people could apply for what is essentially they feel their job right now?
I would anticipate, that, again, from the principle of minimal disruption, if you're somebody who does, say, predominantly human resources for a particular unit, that, you would be the person we have the first conversation with about, should you be, should you be one of the human resources coordinators serving this particular area, or even the HR partner serving that area? That would be the first conversation. We do want to give people the opportunity eventually to say, well, maybe I want to do something, and maybe I can't do it in my own college, my own unit. But the first person we talk to is the person who has the expertise with that particular unit. That's only natural and would keep things relatively simple.
Is this on? So as a follow-up to part of your response previously, you said if you're an academic advisor and you don't touch HR or finance, then this doesn't affect you. So is there a parallel process going on or an anticipated process for functional areas, content, strategy, and expertise areas outside of HR and finance? I mean, I can think of curriculum, I can think of a lot of extension roles. There are a lot of people who don't do HR, don't do finance, but I mean, are those people needing to fit into this, or is there something in the future for those kinds of roles?
I don't think that there's a specific plan. If you are a grant coordinator, our office, the Office of the Vice President for Research, earlier this year had basically a lean event to look at a pre-award process of sending a proposal through departments and colleges to see if we could simplify that process. One of the things that came out of that is the grant coordinators felt like they were not empowered to make the decisions that would make it basically the process work more effectively. They actually, before we even had this model put together, they asked that we consider doing something that would make this a more standard profession at Iowa State. So I think that we will probably convene conversations around this. I've actually talked a little bit to the colleges about how can we serve investigators and our research units in ways that would help them be more effective. They can spend more time on the research. The investigators and the supporting research staff can spend more time on the work that really moves things forward. So I will say that just as from my own perspective as Vice President for Research, but there isn't really a clear sense of what we would do after this. This is going to consume us for a while, so. Does that?
But there are positions that are just totally outside.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have a question, maybe in the form of a true and false type of question. It sounds like the units could be a college, but it sounds to me like it could be a group of departments, larger departments that are kind of grouped together because of these services. Is that true or false?
That is a possibility.
That's a possibility. I don't like that.
Steve Michelson. So are the open positions only for the specialists for what we're seeing here and for the coordinators for HR? Or is it further up for the manager position and the
Oh, definitely.
physical officers?
Yeah, definitely for some of the management positions, the blue ones, we don't really have good equivalents right now. In fact, Pam Kane told us the other day she actually has an associate VP position that is currently empty. And she's waiting to have, some more clarity around where we're going before she fills it. So, we don't have someone in this role right now, but it's not a new position in that, it's an existing position that would be redefined. With respect to the other roles, it depends on how many people we find amongst the current staff. How many of them will remain to be filled, or maybe there won't be any to remain to be filled.
My other question as a department chair is how do we best prepare our staff to apply for these positions?
So let me take a shot and then turn this over to, actually, you're the dean. I'll let you go ahead and do this.
I think the first thing I would say is I would encourage you to give your staff the opportunity to inform themselves as much as possible. It's great that people are here today. As soon as we get clarity on the models, there will be a lot more information available. And so please make sure that you let your staff know where this information is, how they can inform themselves. It's certainly helpful if you learn from your staff who might potentially be interested in which role. But there'll also be a more, consolidated, a more consistent process on finding out. I mean, we're not going to go to every department chair and say, okay, which one of your staff members wants to do what. We'll probably have a way of getting that information in a different process, but you'll certainly be part of the conversations of, what's the future structure that serves ABE? What is it going to be like?
And you might talk to the Sue next door, because she was talking a little bit about gathering her staff and just talking about, think about what you know how to do just to prepare yourself for conversations. The effort is really, we could have all of the positions open and go through a massive application process, or we could just appoint people into slots. And the approach that's under consideration is more of a hybrid, so that, people who are close in, who want to serve in this way, we can keep them close, and we can leverage this expertise. And so we've heard people are sort of preparing their resumes. We hope that they're doing this as an exercise to think through, these are the things I do. And when I write this down, I actually know a lot, as opposed to exiting the system. So we really want to capture the expertise.
Hi, I'm Allie Jensen from New Student Programs. I am interested to know if there is a plan for where these folks will be located physically. So if we have like a support person from our office that becomes a financial services specialist, will they still be housed like physically within our office, or will they be like in administrative services?
Okay. So if this is a financial specialist who serves your unit, the most logical thing is to just keep them within your unit, located in your unit. I can't promise everybody that they'll be at the same desk when this is all said and done, but we try to keep as many people as possible at the same desk. Again, that's to create that connection, that understanding of the people that you serve, and that community with the people that you serve.
Hi, I'm Linda. So is there concern for positions that are currently posted on the job board that are related to HR, finance, or grants, given that there's going to be some influx going on?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot from sort of more administrative folks in the university, as in, if I have a position right now that's open, how should I post it? Should I post it as a position that has some mixed responsibilities versus as a position, if that flexibility is there, that is more focused in finance or more focused in human resources? We don't want to put the cart before the horse, because at the end of the day, it's the president's decision in which direction we're going to go. If it's possible to keep the position open for a little while before filling it, so that decision may be made, that's helpful. If the position that's currently posted already looks like a position that might, fit well or transition well into one of these specialist roles, I see no reason why, people couldn't apply for it and be considered. Does that help? Sort of. Okay.
My question was, are all these positions going to be P&S under that qualification?
Not necessarily. There are some positions that could be merit in the finance side. But again, those details are really not known.
So we also don't know, like, if we would take one of those jobs, if our income would change. And would we be the first to be in line for those jobs, the ones that are going to lose theirs?
Okay, I'm not sure who we is.
Well, okay, I'm like supervisory confidential, which is a thin line.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of the financial where I'm at. So
Yeah.
chances are my job's going to be gone. And, could I get first? Are you going outside to see people?
Okay. Yeah, so the process is really, thank you for clarifying. The process is really to work with the people who are already serving units and try and bring them into this system. So if you're interested in financial specialist positions, for example, expressing that interest will be something you can do. Again, as Beata indicated earlier, the idea is if we can keep people close to where they were serving before, that would be ideal. We don't expect that to be 100%, just with people being interested in mixing and so on, but that's really the premise. How do we minimize disruption? Well, you know your unit. You know how to serve your unit. You know their context and so on. That's a very valuable thing
But I also know, like, my unit is small enough that it would be more than one.
Okay, yep.
We're honors.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I'm one of the
okay.
specialized small.
Yep. Yeah.
So-
But you could end up being a financial specialist on the team that serves honors and a few other units.
Right.
And since you know
But there
honors,
might be
you're
more
the
people applying for that will you have the positions out before you train people? Or will there be training before you apply?
Positions will be out before we train,
Okay.
okay? So, yeah, that sequence is very clear.
I didn't know if you,
But
like base training on how good they'd be in the job.
So that part we don't really know yet, but it's possible that in some areas we won't get enough people inside the system, so training people on campus might be an option. And so, so we don't, that's another one of those things we don't have an answer to, but this idea of how do we prepare people to be successful is part of the discussion, so, yeah.
Is there a deadline for feedback that you want before this goes to the president's office?
We are hoping to make our recommendations to the president, at the latest in early November. So that gives you kind of an idea. So, if we could get the feedback. We're continuing to do campus engagement through next Wednesday. So the feedback portal will certainly remain open through next Wednesday and a little bit beyond that. So you have at least another week and a half to send in your comments.
It's just one of those communications things. Does staff know, here's the deadline?
Yeah. Okay,
know
thank you,
exactly
Brian.
when to-
Thank you, Brian.
Also, on this particular chart, on the bottom, the workday specialists in the red boxes, and this may be too far in advance to know, but obviously there's going to be overlap of knowledge among those different groups. Is that part of the training or professional development that those people in procurement are going to know what happens on the grant side and et cetera, that they're not, right now they look like islands in the...
Yeah, the intent is for these individuals to work as a team, so they need together to know the context of the unit. They should really rely on one another. Almost all of these things are somehow interrelated. It may be that someone doesn't want to do the finance side, but they're really interested in, okay, how do I solve this puzzle? I've got this fund account here and a fund account here. It has this restriction, it has this opportunity over here. How do I put that together? But they might need to work with the financial side to figure out some aspect of that. So they've got a gray box around them on purpose. It's rather a simple representation of what might happen.
Any other questions? As I think through a unit, and this will be another, but this is more or less a comment to think forward. If a unit is many small departments put together to make a unit, and you've got your department chairs within that unit. So you could have 2, 3 department chairs within a unit. Okay, you got fiscal support down below. Who does that person report to? All 3 chairs, or?
Reports over here to the finance manager.
Over to the finance manager, so that will funnel through them.
Yeah, I think of solid lines as supervisory relationships. There's the person who should know what you're doing, they're allocating work across the team and so on. But the working relationship is actually with the unit. So I rely on services all over campus to get our mission accomplished. I don't have any reporting relationship with these individuals, but they are my partners in doing this. This is the sort of the concept between the mission unit and these specialist teams. Does that help? Okay.
Hi, this is Keith. Sort of an aligned question to that. So one of the concerns that I have looked at here is the ability for effective performance evaluation. We've tried at the university, I believe, to do effective 360-degree feedback. But as some of these units appear, or these individuals appear to be getting further and further away from their home unit in terms of a supervisory role, a direct supervisory role, how is that performance evaluation going to be handled effectively to where the people who, the fiscal manager up there actually knows what's going on a day-to-day basis with the individuals down in the teams.
Yeah. So I have a lot of this in my college, liberal arts and sciences, where, I have a line supervisor for someone, but this person also works in a program. So say a faculty member, a lecturer, they have a line supervisor who's their department chair, but this person also works in a cross-disciplinary studies program or so. So I make it very, very clear that the person who writes the performance evaluation is the department chair, but that the department chair has the responsibility to go to the director of the program and get a good assessment of this individual's performance for the program and build that into the letter and make sure that the letter reflects the feedback from the program chair. And maybe they even meet with this faculty member together. So if I look at this relationship, this is the way I envisage that here. Another area where that's already happening for us is those of us who work with the Iowa State Foundation. So I have 3 development officers. They sit in the college office, okay? They sit, in the floors of Cat Hall. They don't report to me, but they work with me every day. But before their performance evaluation takes place, I get a call from their supervisor, and we have a conversation, a scheduled phone conversation, where I can share my feedback about the performance of, the lead development officer. And that's how that works, and it works very well. And the performance evaluation of the development officer and my goals for this person are extremely well aligned. So we have models on campus where this already works. But it does put the responsibility on both parties, the solid line and the dotted line supervisor, to have that conversation.
Anyone else?
We want to thank you all for showing up, asking great questions. We always learn something from these, and we, again, invite you to provide comments. They've been very valuable so far, and I'm sure there's other things that we haven't thought of yet, so we appreciate it. Thank you.